Alien girl accidentally drinks his cologne. Now she's obsessed with his scent. Kale didn't even know how it happened. One minute he was trying to jury-rig a filter for the recycling unit in the stuffy archive chamber. The next, the small ornate flask he'd retrieved from his pack. A gag gift from his sister, expensive eau de cologne. He never actually wore, had somehow tipped over, spilling its contents onto the data spines Lyra was sorting. And then before he could even utter a decent curse, the alien woman had moved with impossible speed, scooping up the wet spines and bringing them to her face. Inhaling sharply. It was an instinctive, protective gesture for the ancient data, he assumed. What came next was less explainable. Her usually serene, geometrically perfect features contorted in a flash of surprise, then something that looked startlingly like intense sensory overload. Her delicate, crystalline tendrils, usually resting against her elegant neck, flared and quivered, emitting a soft, rhythmic pulse of light he hadn't seen before. She made a sound, low and guttural, nothing like her usual precise clicks and hums. What was that? She finally managed, her voice tight, her large, multifaceted eyes fixed on the small flask. Kale felt a wave of heat crawl up his neck. That's just scent from my home world. Earth, it's for, well, making things smell nice. You know, like flowers, but synthetic. We call it cologne. He felt like an idiot explaining human vanity products to an alien guardian of ancient knowledge deep underground. Lyra didn't seem to be listening to the explanation. She was holding the damp data spine again, bringing it slowly to her face, her movements hesitant now, but driven by an undeniable compulsion. She inhaled again, longer this time. Her tendrils pulsed faster, brighter. A faint, almost musical hum resonated from her body. It wasn't just sensory overload anymore. It looked like fascination. Intense, all-consuming fascination. Her gaze flicked from the data spine to him. The intensity in her eyes made him shift uncomfortably. Not, she echoed, the word strange and heavy on her tongue. This is resonance. The way she said it, resonance, was different. It wasn't just the hum of machinery or the echo in the vast caverns. It was personal, primal. She set the spine down with unusual care and took a step towards him, her head tilted slightly. The tendrils continued their frantic pulsing. Kale instinctively backed up, bumping into a stack of shimmering data plates. Oh, hey, easy there. It's just smelly water, basically. Maybe don't inhale too much of it. His attempt at dry humor fell flat. Lyra wasn't smiling. She reached out a long, slender hand, her fingers tipped with fine, retractable claws. She didn't touch him, but her fingertips hovered inches from his worn fatigues, tracing the air near his shoulder where the scent had likely clung from handling the flask. Her tendrils practically vibrated. Resonance, she repeated, quieter this time, almost a whisper. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on him with an unsettling intensity that felt less like scientific curiosity and more like hunger. Not for food, for something else he couldn't name. The ancient texts speak of this. A resonance unbound by ritual. A singular frequency. Kale ran a hand through his short, unwashed hair. Look, I don't know what resonance means in your world, but back home, smelling like a flower factory doesn't usually lead to whatever this is. He gestured vaguely at her pulsing tendrils and unnerving stare. He was supposed to be here quietly documenting remnants of a failed expedition, keeping a low profile until extraction. Getting entangled in alien scent rituals wasn't in the mission brief. Lyra took another slow step closer. It is potent, she murmured, her gaze fixed on his chest. It vibrates at a core frequency unlike any I have ever perceived. Not of our lineage. Not of this world's minerals. Not even of the archive pulse. She lifted her hand higher, her fingers now hovering near his face. He could feel a faint warmth radiating from them, and the low hum from her body seemed to deepen. It is, the way she said, you sent a shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with the cool, subterranean air of the archives. He was starting to realize this wasn't just a cultural misunderstanding about grooming habits. He'd somehow triggered something deep and possibly dangerous. Her formal, measured composure had fractured, replaced by this raw, pulsating focus. This was bad. This was very, very bad. Lyra's internal focus narrowed to a pinprick of pure sensation. The human scent. It wasn't just a smell, not in the way their biofilters processed environmental data. It was a vibration, a complex harmonic structure that resonated directly with the core of her being, bypassing the conscious mind and settling deep within the ancestral resonance node in her chest. It was startlingly specific. It spoke of dry earth after rain, of crushed leaves underfoot, of something sharp and metallic, and a faint, underlying sweetness that made her tendrils ache with a resonance she hadn't known they were capable of. The ancient texts, dismissed by the current priesthood as metaphor, spoke of unbound resonance, a concept considered dangerous and chaotic, a resonance that bypasses the carefully constructed pathways of lineage and ritual, binding itself directly to the self. This human, this Kale with his rough skin and unsettlingly direct gaze, carried such a resonance upon his person. And now, by the simple act of her attempting to salvage the data spine, that resonance had initiated contact. A physical, almost tangible contact that felt like waking up a dormant part of her own structure. She watched him retreat, his movements jerky and uncertain. His words were a jumble of nonsensical sounds. Smelly water, flower factory. He didn't understand the fundamental nature of resonance, the lifeblood of their culture, the force that connected them to their ancestors, to the living archives, to each other through carefully prescribed rituals. He saw only surface, but his scent, his resonance. It saw deeper. It bypassed her defenses, her millennia of cultural conditioning. It demanded attention. It demanded connection. The priesthood would consider this a violation of the highest order. Unbound resonance was heresy. It disrupted the established harmonies, challenged the priesthood's control over the sacred frequencies. They sought to eliminate any deviation, any potential chaos. And Kale, entirely unknowingly, was chaos made manifest, wrapped in a strangely compelling vibration. She had been tasked with observing him, determining if he was a threat or merely an anomaly to be contained and studied. Her initial assessment had been anomaly, albeit a frustratingly unpredictable one. Now, he was something else entirely. He was a trigger, and she was the target. Her tendrils pulsed faster, reflecting the frantic energy of her internal state. She could feel the resonance, his resonance, clinging to the air around him, subtly altering the energy signatures of the archive chamber. It was like a rogue frequency disrupting a perfect chord. But it wasn't unpleasant. It was intoxicating. "You do not understand," she said, her voice regaining some of its formal cadence, though the underlying tremor was still present. "This cologne is not merely a smell. It has interacted with my own resonance pathways. It has initiated a binding." Kale ran a hand through his hair again, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and alarm. "A binding? Like handcuffs? 'Cause I swear that stuff is mostly alcohol and synthetic esters. It shouldn't be doing anything like that." She took another step, closing the remaining distance between them. She could feel the resonance more strongly now, palpable field of energy that made her skin tingle. Not a physical binding, a resonance binding. It is a deep connection on a fundamental frequency level. In our culture, this sort of resonance linking is the basis of pair bonding, of lineage creation. She carefully didn't use the word mating or marriage, though the ancient connotations of unbound resonance linking were clear. It was a primal, unsanctioned form of the most sacred bond. He looked utterly floored. "Pair bonding? Lineage creation? With smelly water? Are you telling me your version of marriage starts with accidental spillages of questionable fragrances?" His sarcasm was sharp, a defensive reflex she was starting to recognize. It was the only part of him that seemed immune to the resonance. "It is not the water," she stated, her gaze intent. "It is the unique frequency encoded within it, a frequency derived, it appears, from you." She reached out, and this time her fingertips lightly brushed the fabric of his shirt. The contact sent a jolt through her, a powerful surge of his resonance flooding her senses. Her tendrils flared violently, the light pulsing so brightly it illuminated the dusty chamber, like a strobe. She gasped, not in pain, but in overwhelmed sensation. It was too much, too fast. The resonance demanded something she couldn't articulate, something ancient and instinctual. Kale stared at her, bewildered and increasingly terrified. Her reaction wasn't just visual. He could feel something, a strange vibration in the air, a low hum that seemed to echo inside his own bones whenever she was close. And when her fingers brushed his shirt, it was like a static shock, but deeper, resonating somewhere in his chest. Her gasp, the flare of light from her tendrils, it was all too real. Okay, hang on, he said, holding up his hands defensively. Let's pump the brakes. You're telling me my terrible Cologne just married us? Because that's a hell of a bar for commitment, even for humans. He tried to inject some of his usual flippancy into his voice, but it came out strained. Her reaction was too intense, too primal to be funny. She was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The light from her tendrils slowly subsided, dimming to a soft, constant glow. But the intensity in her eyes remained, if anything, deepened by the overwhelming contact. It is not marriage, she clarified, her voice still a little breathless. Not in the formal sense. Those bonds require ritual, priesthood sanction, lineage alignment. This is unbound resonance, a primitive, chaotic connection. The text referred to it as the scent lock, an echo of how bonds were formed before the priesthood codified the rituals. She looked away for a moment, towards the vast humming archives, her expression troubled. It is a kezer, forbidden, dangerous. Kale felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Dangerous, forbidden, great, just what he needed. As if being a disgraced ex-soldier hiding out in an alien archive wasn't enough. Now he was part of a forbidden, dangerous scent-based mating ritual. Dangerous? How? Are we gonna sprout weird antenna? Or is this like a cultural faux pas that gets us thrown in alien jail? He needed specifics. Lyra turned back to him, her gaze unwavering. Dangerous because it cannot be controlled. It bypasses lineage, bypasses ritual. It is a direct, unpredictable bond between two beings. The priesthood, they fear such things. They believe unbound resonance weakens the collective, introduces chaos. They suppress all knowledge of the scent lock. She lowered her hand, but her focus didn't leave him. And now we are linked by it. A profound sense of vulnerability washed over her. She, Lyra, guardian of the ancient archives, bound by accident to an alien anomaly through a forgotten, forbidden mechanism. Her duty was to the archives, to her lineage, to the strict protocols of the priesthood. This bond threatened all of it. It was chaotic, yes, but also intensely compelling. The human's resonance was like a missing frequency she hadn't known she was lacking, filling a void within her own harmonic structure. It wasn't logical. It wasn't sanctioned, but it felt right in a way nothing else in her duty-bound existence ever had. The thought terrified her. Kale ran a hand over his face. Okay, so, forbidden scent marriage by accident. Got it? He looked around the archive chamber, the low hum of the data spines suddenly feeling less like ambient noise and more like a watchful presence. So what happens now? Do we elope? Are we on the run from the priesthood now? Lyra inclined her head slowly. The Piacent scent has now marked you, and through the initiated scent lock, it has marked me also. If the priesthood discovers this, they will seek to nullify the bond, which, according to the texts, can only be done by severing the connection. She hesitated, her multifaceted eyes holding his, permanent, for both parties involved. Kale went cold, severing. You mean they'll kill us? Lyra didn't flinch. The texts are not explicit on the method, but the outcome is cessation of the scent lock, cessation of resonance. The silence in the chamber felt heavy, punctuated only by the low thrumming of the archives and the frantic, hidden pulse of Lyra's tendrils beneath her neckpiece. Kale swallowed hard. Accidental cologne spill leads to forbidden alien death bond. This was officially the worst mission he'd ever been on. He looked at Lyra, at her strange beauty, the formal composure that barely hid the tumult within her. She was bound to him now because of him. He might be a disgraced soldier, but leaving someone to face this alone because of his mistake, that wasn't him. All right, he said, pushing off the data plates. New plan. We figure out what this scent lock thing actually does, beyond making your sparkly bits light up, and we figure out how to keep the priesthood from, severing our connection. He wasn't ready to accept death by Cologne. The immediate threat wasn't the priesthood itself, but the automated resonance scanners threaded throughout the archive levels. Lyra explained, her voice hushed as they moved deeper into the labyrinthine chambers, staying low among the towering data spines. The priesthood monitors all significant resonance fluctuations within the archives. The scent lock, being unbound and chaotic, creates a unique volatile signature. We must dampen our combined resonance until we can find a way to mask it or understand it. Kale nodded, trying to absorb the alien logic. Resonance. It was everything to them, it seemed. Not just communication or energy, but identity, connection, life itself. And his cheap cologne had apparently short-circuited the whole system. Okay, dampen our resonance. How do we do that? Hold our breath? Wear tinfoil hats? Lyra shot him a look that was almost a glare, her cultural equivalent of exasperation. Resonance is not a gas to be inhaled or a signal to be blocked by metallic sheeting. It is intrinsic. We must suppress the interaction of our resonances. The scent lock amplifies when we are in close proximity, especially during moments of high stress or strong emotional output. Kale felt his face heat up. High stress, check. Strong emotional output, contemplating being killed for selling good, check. And now she was implying being physically close was bad, which was a problem because moving through the archives without sticking together was impossible. The paths were narrow, winding, and often required them to squeeze past ancient data nodes. He could feel her presence acutely beside him, the subtle shift in the air, the faint, still present trace of that intoxicating resonance emanating from her. So, basically, he muttered, the more freaked out we get and the closer we are, the louder our forbidden love signal gets. This just keeps getting better. Lyra didn't respond to his sarcasm. She paused before a section of the archive wall that seemed to shimmer differently, a faint pattern visible only when the ambient light hit it right. There is a passage here, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low hum. An old maintenance route, sealed millennia ago. It leads to the deeper, forgotten levels. The resonance scanners do not extend there. It is our only path. Cal eyed the shimmering wall. It looked solid. Sealed? How sealed? Like just needs a kick or needs a cutting torch. Lyra didn't answer directly. She placed a hand against the wall. Her fingers splayed. Her tendrils began to pulse again, slowly at first, then building speed and intensity. As the light pulsed, the shimmering pattern on the wall seemed to deepen, to become more defined. A low tone emanated from her, a soft, melodic hum that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. The wall rippled, like water disturbed by a stone, and a section of it slowly, silently, slid inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage beyond. Kale stared, impressed despite himself. Okay, that's new. You can open walls with singing? Lyra withdrew her hand, her breathing slightly heavier. It is resonance, attuned to the archive's core frequency, a forgotten access method. She gestured for him to enter the passage. We must be swift. The energy fluctuation from opening the passage will be noted. Kale didn't hesitate. He ducked into the passage, the air inside thick with a scent of dust and something ancient and mineral. Lyra followed closely behind, the wall sealing seamlessly behind her. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the faint internal glow of Lyra's tendrils, which now pulsed with a rhythm that felt less frantic than before, a steady, almost comforting beat in the oppressive dark. Forced proximity was now absolute. Moving required them to brush against each other in the narrow confines. Each contact sent that familiar, confusing jolt through Kale. He could feel the latent power in her, the strange connection that had been forged by a ridiculous accident. It was terrifying, yes, but also something else. Something that made the stale air feel charged, made his skin prickle not just with fear, but with an unfamiliar awareness of her. The silence was broken only by their footsteps and the low, resonant hum of Lyra's tendrils, a private frequency binding them together in the dark. Days blurred into a timeless existence within the forgotten depths of the archives. They navigated narrow passages, climbed ancient maintenance shafts, and sheltered in chambers untouched for epochs. The air grew heavier, warmer, and the hum of the distant upper levels faded entirely, replaced by the silence of deep earth and the quiet resonance of their own bodies. The forced proximity was constant. They slept mere feet apart, ate nutrient-paced in silence, and moved as one unit through the darkness. Cale, the disgraced soldier, found himself relying on his basic survival instincts, reading subtle shifts in air currents, identifying stable ground, rationing supplies. Lyra, the ritual-bound guardian, navigated using her innate sense of resonance, feeling the subtle vibrations of the ancient structure, guiding them through paths invisible to his eyes. She spoke sparingly, primarily to provide direction or offer clipped explanations of the strange architecture they encountered. Her formalism remained, but cracks were appearing. He noticed the subtle slump of her shoulders when she thought he wasn't looking, the way her tendrils dimmed when she was weary, the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes when the silence stretched too long. His dry humor, initially met with uncomprehending silence, started to elicit small, fleeting responses, a slight tilt of her head, a barely perceptible shift in her posture. He described some ridiculous earth custom, or the mundane horrors of military life, and she would listen with that vain, intense focus he'd first seen when she inhaled his cologne. But now it felt less like scientific curiosity and more like a slow, careful absorption of him. "So, yeah," he'd said one night, huddled in a dusty chamber, sharing the last of their water. "After the incident, they stripped my rank, kicked me out, said I wasn't fit for duty. Not reliable." Turns out reliable means you follow orders even when they're monumentally stupid and get innocent people killed. He hadn't meant to confess. The words just tumbled out in the dark. Lyra was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, softer than usual. "Reliability, in our understanding, is alignment with the dominant frequency. Deviation is corrected," he snorted. "Yeah, sounds about right. My deviation got me here." She shifted slightly, and he felt the faint warmth of her presence closer. "The priesthood enforces a single pure frequency. They fear the harmony of dissonant tones." She paused. "Your resonance, it is dissonant to their design. That is why it must be harmonized or eliminated." Her honesty was stark. He was a dissonant tone, a rogue frequency, and the scentlock had created a dissonant chord between them. He looked at her in the faint glow of her tendrils. "And you're part of their perfect harmony?" Lyra was silent for even longer this time. When she spoke, her voice was tight with suppressed emotion. "My lineage is bound to the archives, to the preservation of knowledge, to the priesthood's interpretation of resonance. My life has been the pursuit of perfect alignment." She inhaled slowly, and he heard the subtle shift in her internal hum. "The scentlock, it has introduced a frequency I was not prepared for, a frequency that vibrated with his scent, his essence, binding itself to her core being. It was a constant internal presence, a low thrum beneath her own carefully maintained harmony. It was disrupting her alignment, challenging everything she had been taught. Yet, it also felt vital, a new note in a melody that had grown stagnant. The shared trauma, the constant threat, the forced intimacy of their flight. It was stripping away the layers of ritual and rank, revealing something raw and vulnerable beneath. He saw the burden she carried, the weight of tradition and duty. She saw the weariness in his eyes, the shadow of past failure, the unexpected kindness beneath his cynicism. They were dissonant tones forced into harmony by a ridiculous accident, hiding in the dark while a rigid, fundamentalist power sought to silence their song forever. Their journey led them deeper, into levels the resonance scanners couldn't penetrate, but which held their own, older dangers. Automated defense systems, designed millennia ago to protect the most sensitive archives, still pulsed with dormant energy. They were designed to recognize unauthorized resonance patterns and neutralize them. The scentlock, the unbound, chaotic connection between Kale and Lyra was the ultimate audiobooks pattern. Navigating these levels required a level of synergy they hadn't yet achieved. Lyra could sense the energy fields, the tripwires of ancient resonance, but only Kale's physical agility and instinct could get them through the narrow, decaying pathways in time. It was a tense, silent ballet of movement and detection. Lyra would hum a low warning note, her tendrils flaring towards a specific point, and Kale would contort himself, ducking under a shimmering barrier just as it pulsed with lethal force, or leaping over a floor tile that momentarily dissolved into a void of disruptive energy. During one particularly perilous section, a cascade of collapsing debris trapped Kale's leg. A pulse barrier was activating just ahead, closing off the path. Lyra moved instantly, her strength surprising. She braced against the falling rocks, her body rigid, her face a mask of concentration, as she used her resonance to try and stabilize the collapsing passage. But it wasn't enough. The barrier pulsed brighter, closer. Kale felt a searing pain shoot up his leg. He looked at the barrier, then at Lyra straining against the rockfall. This was it. They were caught. "Go," he yelled, pushing her away. "You can make it? Leave me." Lyra didn't move. Her eyes met his, and in their depths, he saw not the cold, ritual-bound guardian, but a fierce, desperate resolve. Her tendrils flared with a brilliant, sustained light, brighter than he had ever seen. And then, new sound joined the hum of the ancient defense system. A deep, resonant chord emanating from Lyra, a sound that felt like the core of the planet vibrating. It wasn't just her own resonance. It felt like theirs, the scent lock, amplified by fear, by desperation, by her refusal to leave him. The wave of resonance struck the pulse barrier, not as a challenge, but as something else entirely. It rippled, distorted, and then, instead of closing, it seemed to accept them. It shimmered, turning translucent, and the path beyond became visible. Lyra stumbled back, her energy depleted, but the passage was open. Kale, ignoring the pain, dragged his leg free and scrambled through the shimmering barrier just as it solidified behind them, sealing the collapsed passage. He collapsed on the other side, breathing hard. Lyra sank to her knees beside him, her own breathing ragged, her tendrils pulsing with a weak, irregular light. The air between them thrummed with the aftershock of that combined, powerful resonance. You opened it," Kale gasped, looking at the barrier. With the scent lock." Lyra nodded, her eyes closed for a moment. "The ancient systems, they recognize only pure lineage-aligned resonance, or unbound resonance of significant strength. Our bond, it created such a frequency. It was not alignment. It was irresistible dissonance. Irresistible dissonance. A chaotic signal, so strong it broke through ancient security." He looked at her, truly looked at her, seeing past the alien form to the sheer will and power she had just displayed. She had risked everything, expended incredible energy, amplified their forbidden bond to save him. "You didn't leave me," he said, the words thick with emotion. Lyra opened her eyes. In their depths, the cold formality was gone, replaced by a raw, undeniable connection. "The scent lock," she whispered, her voice weak, "binds resonance. And resonance seeks harmony. Even dissonance, when combined with sufficient power, creates a new harmony, an unexpected one." The air crackled with unsaid things. They had faced death together, used their forbidden bond to survive, and in the process, had shattered the last vestiges of her emotional restraint and his jaded cynicism. The scent that had started this absurd journey now felt less like a mistake and more like fate, drawing them into a harmony neither could have predicted. Kale's leg was badly bruised, but not broken. Lyra tended to it with surprising gentleness, applying a cool gel-like substance from a pouch on her belt that instantly numbed the pain and began to knit the damaged tissue. They had found refuge in a vast, cathedral-like chamber deep within the forgotten levels. It was untouched by the priesthood's influence, the air pure and still, illuminated by faint, phosphorescent veins in the rock. In the center of the chamber stood an ancient, crystalline structure that hummed with a different kind of energy, a slow, deep vibration that felt older than the archives themselves. This, Lyra explained, was a core resonance node, a place of profound power and connection, bypassed and forgotten by the current priesthood. This node, she said, her voice hushed with reverence, is where the ancient ones would perform the original resonance bindings, before the rituals were codified. Before the priesthood took control, Kale sat against a cool rock face, watching her. The near-death experience, the raw power of their combined resonance, the simple act of her caring for his injury, it had stripped away the last of his defenses. He felt exposed, vulnerable, and intensely aware of her in a way that transcended the physical. The scentlock, he said, his voice quiet, it's like that, isn't it? Like those ancient bindings. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the glowing node. It is. A primitive echo, driven by scent, by frequency recognition, bypassing conscious intent. She turned to him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the faint light of the chamber. It is considered sacred by the few texts that speak of it. A true merging of frequencies, initiated by instinct. The air between them thickened, charged with the energy of the node and the undeniable reality of their bond. There was no escaping it here, in this place of ancient power. The fight for survival had forged a connection that was raw, visceral, and demanded to be acknowledged. He looked at her, the alien woman bound to him by chance, who had just saved his life by unleashing a power neither of them fully understood. He saw her strength, her duty, her unexpected tenderness, and he saw the fear, the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. He was a dissonant tone she was bound to harmony, and together they had created something powerful and forbidden. What happens now? He asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. We're bound. The priesthood wants to kill us. What's the next step? Lyra moved closer, sitting opposite him, her knees almost touching his. The resonance between them intensified, a warm pulsing field that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. Her tendrils began to glow softly, not with frantic energy, but with a slow, steady light. The ancient texts say the scentlock can only be resolved in two ways, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Severing or completion. Completion. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. His mind flashed back to her earlier words, pair bonding, lineage creation. Completion, he echoed, his voice rough. You mean the other way they used to do these bindings? The ancient way? Lyra nodded, her gaze unwavering. In this place, at a core resonance node, it is emerging, a joining of frequencies so profound it becomes a single, new harmonic. It is, she hesitated, searching for the words, it is the physical manifestation of the resonance bomb. The silence stretched, filled only by the low hum of the node and the steady pulse of her tendrils. Physical manifestation, merging frequencies. He looked at her alien features, the strange beauty, the depth of emotion in her eyes. They were from different worlds, different species, bound by an accident and hunted by a fanatical priesthood. And the path forward, the path to survival, was through a forbidden, ancient ritual of completion. It wasn't just about sex. He knew that. It was about something deeper, something fundamental to her being, and, terrifyingly, now to his. The air in the chamber thrummed with anticipation, thick with the energy of the core resonance node and the raw power of their scentlock. There was no denying the pull anymore. Survival demanded it, fate had ordained it, and their bodies, attuned to each other through weeks of forced proximity and shared danger, craved it. Lyra's formality had completely dissolved, replaced by a quiet intensity that mirrored his own. She reached out a hand, not tentative this time, but deliberate, and laid it flat against his chest, directly over his heart. The touch sent a jolt through him, not a shock, but a deep resonance that settled in his bones. He could feel her pulse beneath her skin, feel the deep hum emanating from within her, a complex, beautiful frequency that resonated with his own heartbeat. Her tendrils, now glowing with a soft, steady light, curled slightly. The ancient texts describe this as the merging of cores, she whispered, her gaze locked on his. Our inherent frequencies, joined at a point of power. It is not mere physical joining, but a total immersion of self. He covered her hand with his own, his thumb stroking the smooth, warm skin of her wrist. Immersion, he repeated, the word feeling sacred on his tongue. It wasn't just about the act. It was about the connection, the resonance, the forbidden bond they were choosing to complete. He saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the leap of faith she was taking with him. A strange, scarred human who smelled of synthetic flowers. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low. "This changes everything. For both of us." Lyra didn't hesitate. "It has already changed everything, Cale." She used his name, not his designation, for the first time. "The scent lock is initiated. To sever it is death. To complete it is a new path. For my lineage. For the archives. For us." She wasn't just an heiress or a guardian anymore. She was a woman making a choice that defied millennia of tradition, driven by a bond she hadn't sought but couldn't deny. He looked at her, at the alien woman who saw him not as a disgrace, but as a dissonant tone capable of powerful, irresistible harmony. "Then let's see this path," he said, his voice firm. He pulled her gently towards him. The contact was electric, a surge of energy that wrapped around them both. Her skin was smooth and warm against his, her body surprisingly yielding as they came together. The light from her tendrils intensified, casting dancing shadows on the ancient wall. The hum from the core resonance node deepened, vibrating through the floor, through their bodies, a witness to their forbidden union. It was a convergence of senses, a merging of frequencies. He felt not just her physical form, but the intricate energy of her being, the ancient resonance of her lineage, the raw, untamed power of their scent lock. She felt his physical presence, the solid duality of his body, the comforting weight of his arms around her, but also the unique frequency of his scent, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the quiet strength of his spirit. It was a dance of two entirely different forms, finding a perfect, unexpected harmony, guided by instinct and the powerful pull of their bond. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, only a profound sense of rightness. They moved together, driven by a force that felt older than consciousness, a resonance seeking its completion. Her skin shimmered under his touch, her tendrils pulsing with a rhythm that matched his own accelerating pulse. She made soft sounds, not words, but pure expressions of overwhelmed sensation and deep internal resonance. He responded with instinct, with tenderness, with the accumulated yearning of weeks spent in tense, forced proximity. It was raw, intimate, and utterly consumed by the powerful energy of the node and the scent lock binding them. The climax was not just physical, but a complete surrender of their individual frequencies, merging into a single powerful harmonic that resonated through the ancient chamber, through the core node, and deep within their very beings. The light from Lyra's tendrils flared one last time, blindingly bright, and then slowly, softly dimmed. The intense hum from the node lessened, settling into a gentle thrum. They collapsed together, breathless, changed. In the aftermath, the silence in the chamber was profound, broken only by their ragged breathing and the slow, steady thrum of the core resonance node. The intense, pulsating light of Lyra's tendrils had softened to a gentle, constant glow, no longer frantic or overwhelmed, but serene. Cale held her close, his body aching, his mind reeling. That wasn't just sex. It was a merging, a completion. He could still feel the echo of her resonance deep within him, a low, comforting vibration that felt inextricably linked to his own heartbeat. It was the scent lock, fulfilled. Lyra stirred, shifting slightly in his arms. She looked up at him, her eyes soft, clear, and filled with an emotion she had never shown him before, a quiet, deep affection mixed with awe. "It is done," she whispered, her voice raspy. "The scent lock is complete." Cale traced the line of her jaw with his thumb. "What does that mean? For us? For the priesthood?" Lyra sat up, though she didn't move away from him. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "It means our resonances are no longer merely linked," she explained, her voice stronger now, though still quiet. "They are interwoven. We are one frequency, in two forms. The priesthood's scanners will no longer register us as unbound chaos. We will appear as a stable, completed resonance signature. An ancient one, yes, but stable." Cale frowned. "So, they won't see us as a threat anymore, or they'll just see us as a different kind of forbidden." Lyra sighed. A soft, non-human sound. "A different kind. One they may not understand how to sever." The ancient texts on completed scent locks are rare and fragmented. The priesthood suppressed them effectively. She paused. But it does not mean we are safe. A completed scent lock, particularly one initiated outside of their control and not aligned with approved lineages, still a challenge to their authority, perhaps an even greater one. They had survived the immediate threat of being unregistered chaos, only to become a more complex, possibly more dangerous problem. Cale ran a hand over his face. Great. So we went from accidental death sentence to archaic political problem. Lyra leaned her head more heavily against his shoulder. In our culture, a completed resonance binding, particularly at a core node, is sacred. It is recognized by the deep structure of the world itself, even if the priesthood denies it. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his head, a gesture so simple, so human, yet utterly profound coming from her. It is the foundation of a new lineage. New lineage. His mind struggled to comprehend the weight of those words. He was a human, the last of his failed mission, his own lineage a world away. She was an alien, bound by duty and now by him, the potential founder of a forbidden line. Their completion wasn't just personal. It had cosmic, cultural implications. Neither of them could fully grasp yet. But looking at her, feeling the steady hum of their joined resonance, the fear that had driven him for weeks began to recede, replaced by something else. A sense of grounding, of belonging. He was a dissonant tone, lost and alone, and she had found him, woven him into a new, unexpected harmony. It was terrifying, yes, but also undeniably hopeful. They were bound irrevocably. And for the first time since crashing on this alien world, Cale didn't feel entirely alone. He had a partner, a fierce, strange, beautiful partner, bound to him by Cologne and chaos, and a completed resonance that felt like coming home. Their emergence from the forgotten levels was not a quiet one. The completed scent lock, while stable, pulsed with an ancient, powerful frequency that resonated throughout the lower archive levels. It acted like a beacon, drawing not just the wary attention of the priesthood, but also attracting others who felt the pull of the unbound resonance, those few who still clung to the old ways. The marginalized and the dispossessed, who saw the priesthood's rigid control as a perversion of their heritage. As they navigated the upper levels, they were met not just by priesthood patrols, but by small, hesitant groups of Lyra's people, archivists, lower caste guardians, even some disgraced former priesthood initiates, their tendrils pulsing with a mixture of curiosity and awe at the powerful, ancient resonance emanating from the human and the ritual-bound airs. Lyra, her posture straighter now, her voice resonating with a newfound authority that surprised even Cale, addressed them not as fugitives, but as inheritors of a forgotten truth. She spoke of the scent lock of the core node, of the completion of a resonance bond that transcended lineage and ritual, a bond recognized by the deep structure of their world. Her words, amplified by the palpable energy of their bond, stirred something in the assembled aliens. Cale, standing slightly behind her, a silent, steady presence, felt their gazes on him. They saw the human, the outsider, bound irrevocably to one of their most sacred lines, radiating a resonance they hadn't felt in millennia. He was the living embodiment of the forbidden, and yet standing beside Lyra, he was also the catalyst for a potential revolution. The priesthood arrived swiftly, their movements sharp, their resonance cold and cutting, led by the hierarch, a figure of imposing presence, whose tendrils pulsed with a sterile, controlling light. They confronted Lyra. Guardian Lyra, the hierarch's voice was like grinding stone, amplified and projected throughout the chamber. You have defiled your station. You have engaged in forbidden practices with an outsider. This unbound resonance must be purged. Lyra stepped forward, shielding Cale slightly with her body. Hierarch, her voice was calm, steady, resonating with the deep power of their bond. The resonance is not unbound. It is completed. At a core node, according to the ancient ways. We are not a defilement. We are a new harmonic, a potential future. The hierarch's tendrils flared with anger. Future? You speak heresy. The only future is the purity of aligned lineage. Guided by the priesthood, Lyra's gaze met the hierarch's, unwavering. Purity can become stagnation. Alignment can become control. The archives themselves teach that resonance seeks not only purity, but complexity. Growth. She held out her hand, and Kale instinctively took it, their joined frequencies pulsing visibly in the air between them. This is the complexity. This is the growth. Initiated by chance, completed by choice. The energy from their bond washed over the assembled crowd, a palpable wave of ancient power that seemed to challenge the very foundation of the priesthood's authority. The marginalized aliens shifted, their initial fear giving way to something that looked like hope. The priesthood guards hesitated, their rigid formations wavering under the pressure of this unforeseen resonance. The completion of their scent lock hadn't just saved them. It had made them a symbol of defiance, of ancient power, of a forbidden harmony that might just be strong enough to shatter a stagnant order. Kale, the disgraced soldier, found himself standing at the precipice of an alien revolution, bound by Cologne and love to the woman who had become his world. The confrontation in the archives reached a tense stalemate. The hierarch, sensing the shift in the assembled crowd's resonance, was unwilling to force a violent confrontation against a completed ancient bond whose power he didn't fully understand and which seemed to resonate with dissent among his own people. Instead, he issued a decree. Lyra and Kale were to be confined to a secure sector of the archives, their unique resonance studied and contained. It was not freedom, but it was not immediate execution either. A temporary reprieve bought by the power of their bond. In their confinement, a luxurious but isolated section deep within the archives, Kale and Lyra began to navigate the strange reality of their completed scentlock. It wasn't just the emotional or physical intimacy, though that remained a powerful grounding force. It was the constant, low thrum of their attraint frequencies, an ever-present awareness of the other. They could sense each other's emotional states, subtle shifts in mood, even distant physical discomfort. It wasn't telepathy, not exactly, but a resonance echo, a constant whisper of the other's presence deep within their shared harmonic. Kale, the man who had carefully guarded his emotional distance for years, found it simultaneously unsettling and deeply comforting. Lyra, who had lived a life of strict emotional control, found the openness of their connection overwhelming but liberating. It is like sharing a single mind but retaining individual thought, she explained one cycle, studying the intricate patterns of light that now occasionally flickered across Kale's own skin, faint echoes of her tendril glow. Our resonances are integrated. What affects one vibrates within the other. Kale grinned, a rare, genuine smile. So, if I stub my toe, you'll feel it. Lyra gave him a look that held a hint of dry humor now, a new facet of her personality unlocked by their bond. A distant echo of discomfort, perhaps. If you were to experience significant pain or emotional distress, the resonance would be more pronounced. They spent their time studying the salvage data spines from the chamber where the accident occurred, searching for more information on the scentlock, on their completed state, on the history of the ancient rituals. They learned that a completed scentlock was considered unbreakable, a bond recognized by the planet's own core resonance. It was a true merging capable of creating a new stable frequency that could, in theory, be the foundation for a new lineage. Outside the strictures of the priesthood, they also learned that such bonds were rare, often spontaneous, and deeply feared by those who sought control through rigid structure. The hierarch's fear was rational, in his own twisted way. Their bond represented a return to chaos, to a time before the priesthood codified and controlled all resonance, all connection. But to Kale and Lyra, it represented freedom. Freedom from the constraints of their pasts, from the expectations placed upon them, from the priesthood's suffocating control. They were confined, yes, but together. Their completed resonance a silent, powerful act of defiance. The dry humor, born of cultural misunderstanding, had evolved into a shared language of affection and understanding. He teased her about her formality. She gently mocked his reliance on smelly water to initiate profound bonds. But beneath the humor was a deep, unshakable connection, forged in accident, tempered by survival, and completed in sacred intimacy. Life in confinement settled into a rhythm, dictated by their study and the subtle pulse of their shared resonance. The priesthood kept them isolated, but didn't interfere directly, wary of provoking the ancient power of their completed bond. Other aliens, those who had witnessed their defiance, sometimes managed to slip messages or small comforts to them, small acts of solidarity that spoke volumes about the growing dissent within the archives. Lyra, no longer just a guardian of dusty records, began to formulate a new understanding of her role. The archives weren't just about preserving the past. They were about understanding the nature of resonance itself in all its forms, controlled and unbound. Their completed scent lock wasn't just a personal bond, it was a living artifact, a testament to a forgotten truth that challenged the priesthood's dogma. Kale, the disgraced soldier, found a new purpose. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was helping Lyra uncover the history of her own people, using his practical mind to piece together fragments of ancient texts, applying his understanding of strategy to their confined situation. His sarcasm was still present, but it was softer now, often directed inward or used to lighten Lyra's more serious moments. One cycle, Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her tendrils glowing softly. "Your resonance, it is settling," she observed, her voice quiet, "integrating fully with my own. The dissonance is resolved. We are a singular harmonic." Kale smiled, leaning into her touch. "Does that mean I finally passed the smell test?" Lyra's lips curved in a genuine smile, a rare and beautiful sight. "It means you are no longer an intruder, Kale. You are essential." The word hung in the air, filled with the weight of their journey. Essential. He, the cast-off human, essential to this alien woman, to her lineage, perhaps even to the future of her world. The completed scent lock wasn't just a bond of love. It was a merging of destinies. The external threat from the priesthood remained, a low thrum of danger beneath their newfound peace. But they faced it together, their completed resonance, a shield and a weapon. They had found strength in their forbidden union, a power that came not from control, but from acceptance, acceptance of chaos, of dissonance, of the unexpected harmony created by two vastly different beings, bound by chance and choice. Their story, initiated by a ridiculous accident, was no longer just about survival. It was about forging a new path, a new lineage, a new resonance in a world desperate for change. They were the dissonant chord that had resolved into a beautiful, unexpected harmony, a testament to the truth that the most profound connections often begin with the most unlikely sparks. The scent of Cologne, a silly human vanity, had become the catalyst for something sacred, something revolutionary.